It's lovely to be here on this balmy Melbourne evening. I think spring has finally sprung here, which is absolutely lovely rather than being freezing cold. If you don't know me, I'm Nicola Marsh. I'm an Aussie author of 80 books. I've been writing for nearly 20 years now, so I'm feeling a bit old. Um, I first was published back in 2004 with Harlequin, Mills and Boon, and I wrote about 40 books for them. And then I started to write some other books as well. And I'm actually here tonight to talk about my newest release, The Promise of Home. Uh, I had a ball with this book. Um, if you read my book last year, which came out about this time as well, Summer of Serenity, it's a small town uh, fiction romance. It's set in a fictional town of Acacia Haven, which is not far from Inverloch, which is on the eastern coast of Victoria. I had booked a trip to do some first-hand research down there, but of course lockdowns happened, so I had to cancel it, and I had to make the whole thing up out of my head, which was it was fun anyway. Um, so in this book, we've got Carly, who's a real estate agent, and she owns the agency with her grandfather, Jem. And they have a problem because Jem wants to retire and he wants to sell the agency. And Carly thinks she'll be taking it over. But unfortunately, there's Hudson, who is the person who owns lots and lots of agencies in Melbourne. And he has his sights set on their agency too. He has his reasons. He was homeless as a child and he wants to help kids like him. But these two, Carly and Hudson, butt heads a lot. So it's very, very interesting. I can see some people popping in here, which is really, really lovely. I've got Wendy from Wagga Wagga, fantastic. And we've got Sabine from Inverloch. Now, you absolutely have to read this book, even though I made up my town based on Inverloch. It will be fun for you, especially. In the book as well, we've actually got a second couple who tell their story. We've got Heidi, who's 50, and Jem, who's 69, and she's Carly's grandfather in the book. And they have a very interesting time trying to find their way towards love, I suppose. Because they're a bit older, they have different trials and tribulations than Carly and Hudson face. Sabine, I think you really should read it. And Helene, hello from Illinois. I know you. I've seen you on Facebook all the time. What time is it over there? It must be very early in the morning, if I'm correct. So thank you for popping in. So if you want to ask me any questions about the book, please feel free, or not just about this book. If you'd like to ask me any questions about my writing career, like I said, I've been at it for a while, and I've written across many, many different genres in that time. I've done books for teens, which are sort of more urban fantasy with magic and witches and time traveling and all sorts of things. I've written rom-coms. You can probably see a few on the shelf behind me. And I also write psychological thrillers at the moment too. So please feel free to ask me anything you like. 5 o'clock in the morning, Helene, that is amazing. Well done to you for popping in so early in the morning. I quickly chat about my first two books in this genre as well. We've got Long Way Home and Second Chance Lane, which were actually set in a fictional town, but based on Echuca, because I've loved Echuca since I was a child. Uh, I've visited lots of times, and then I've taken my kids there lots of times. I think there's something very special about small country towns. It's just that feeling of warmth and community, which I hope I bring into my books. I see I have a question from Helene. How do you keep writing with such fresh ideas? Um, that's an excellent question. Uh, I think at the moment, for me, because I'm writing across different genres, I find sort of moving from different book to different book helps keep me fresh all the time. Uh, and it's actually a really nice change to actually move from, say, writing about a small town and there's a wide cast of characters, lots and lots of things to sort of to work out, to then a quick switch to something which is a bit darker and twisted, which on the surface will still have maybe family or friends, uh, but as you move into it, there's lots and lots of darker twists, and there's always a special twist on the final page, which I have a ball with. And it's actually sort of quite hard to actually think, okay, everything's solved, the mystery's solved, everyone's happy. But are they really? Because on that last page, I always like to add in a little twist. Hi, Wendy. Your father came from Gippsland and used to go to Inverloch to the beach. Oh, that's really great. Absolutely lovely. And I agree, Echuca is wonderful. Like I said, I've been there sort of over the last many years, 40 plus years. Many times, and it's funny because each time I go, I sort of just still feel like it's the first time, just because it's got that really nice sort of warm feeling. More about me, I suppose, is one thing I'm asked all the time is, and I actually had a book launch for this last week at a bookstore, and I was asked this again, was where do you get your ideas or inspiration for a book? For this book, it was actually from a mum's lunch at school, of all places. Um, there was actually a mum there who's an agent, uh, and she was mentioning how she'd moved on from selling houses, and now she was more involved in the prop tech side of things. And my ears instantly pricked up because I'd never heard of what prop tech was. Uh, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to head home and look that up, because I already knew from book one in this duo that Carly was a real estate agent. So I thought, I wonder if I can use that somehow and make that into a book. And that's exactly what I did. So that was the inspiration for this new book. One thing I'm also asked is, and it's quite often, why did you leave a career in physiotherapy to write books? And my answer to that is sort of long. What happened was, at school, I love books. I've loved books since I was really little. In primary school, I'd read 10 books a week. I just devoured books all the time. In high school, I loved English and I loved to write. So I found that any time I was given an assignment, the words would just pour out and I'd always get A's. And I thought, you know what, perhaps I can write. But then I wasn't sure if I could make a living out of that. So, year 10, I did work experience in a physiotherapy department. I thought, "Oh, well, that's a cool job. I'll be that." So, yeah, 4 years at uni, 13 years working full time. Um, and it was good, but in the back of my mind all those years, I always thought, "You know what? One day I'd like to write a book." So after that, I thought, "You know what? I'm sick of, thinking about it. I think I'll do it." So I actually joined a writing group here in Melbourne, which I found online, and from there, I started writing. And like I said, I was actually lucky enough, I sold my first book, signed a 2-book contract with Harlequin whilst I was expecting my first child. So I sort of had a year off to work out if I want to write full time, and I absolutely did, and I absolutely loved it, and I haven't gone back, and I've been writing ever since. One other thing I'm asked often is, um, are your stories based on real life? And I sort of always say no, because I actually make it a point to always write fiction. So, whilst I might base my towns, on real places, I don't like to base my characters on real people. I'd much rather make things up. I think it's a lot more fun, so that's what I do. Wendy has a question, how many books would you write per year? I've had a very hectic, last 3 or 4 years where I've been trying to juggle writing for 3 different publishers. So, I've been writing for HarperCollins here in Australia with these books. So I had to write one of these each year, and they're roughly about 90,000 words. Um, then I've been writing for Bookateur in London, which are my psychological thrillers. They're roughly about sort of 80,000 words. I had to write one of those a year, and I've been writing rom-coms for Penguin Random House in the US. So I wouldn't advise anyone to actually do that because I'm thoroughly exhausted. It's been really, really tough. Um, so yes, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been writing 3, books a year. Um, in an ideal world, I'd probably write 2 a year, uh, because otherwise, what happens? It's not just the actual writing of the book. I mean, that's sort of the easy part. I mean, it's not easy, but it is easy, easier than what happens once I finish writing. It gets sent back to my editor, and then they will look at the book. They will go through with a fine tooth comb, and then it gets sent back to me with comments and notes saying, "I love this part. I don't like this part. You need to change this part." So if you're juggling across 3 different publishers and 3 genres, what tends to happen is once I finish writing one book and it gets sent off, the last book I've written comes back to me, which I need to then work on and revise. And then once that book gets sent back, the 3rd book from way back when comes back. So it's almost like this constant, act of juggling, all the time. And at one point, I had all 3 books, uh, which had to be worked on at the same time, and that was like it was really, really interesting. Um, so yes, like I said, I've been writing 3, a year, but I probably like to write a bit less. It makes it very, very challenging. So please keep popping questions in there that I can answer because I'd love to keep chatting. Um, I'm also asked quite often do you have a favorite genre? Um, That is really, really hard to answer because I love them all equally. Um, as far as the writing goes, I find, writing the rom-coms probably the easiest. Um, and with that in mind, my 80th book is coming out next month in 2 weeks, October the 4th. This book, uh, absolutely flew out of me. I absolutely had a ball writing it. It's about a book reviewer who gets stranded with an author whose book she might have labeled with a big fat DNF. Uh, there's a very annoying cat in the book, and it's just pure fun. Um, but yeah, I find writing these sort of like probably the easiest for me. But as far as the most fun, I love these books more because I know as I write them, because it's in a small town, there's such a wide cast in the book that I have ideas whilst I'm writing for future books. So I know in this book there's actually 3 best friends. So we had Summer's story last year. This is Carly's story. And I'd love to write Ned's story too. That would be absolutely fun. These books I absolutely love because I can do bad things to the characters, which I definitely can't do in my other books. It's fun. Hi, Melissa. You've asked how long would it take you to revise and do like edits on each book? Um, I find usually once the book's written, that's sort of the hardest part to get sort of the 80 to 100,000 words out of my head onto a page. Um, with the actual edits, what happens is it's not usually just one actual round of edits. A book will go back usually for about 4 rounds of edits. So what happens is the first lot is usually the longest. So I'd usually be given about 3 weeks. And with that, it's more intense. So it might mean, chopping scenes out, adding new scenes, sort of deepening a character's motivation, that type of thing. So then after that's all done, sent back, then it will come back to me in a few weeks for copy edits, which is still sort of like looking at things that are more broad. Then it'll come back again for line edits, which is really sort of starting to look at sort of exact things that need to be changed. And then it'll come back for proofs. So yeah, for each book, it usually goes through at least 4 rounds of back and forth, which makes for a very interesting time because, like I mentioned earlier, if I'm writing the next book, which I usually am, I need to then stop, get pulled back out of that story, and then go back and work on the one that I've handed in last. Helene's asked, do you read books from other genres, and do you actually have time to read? My ideal life would involve me just being curled up on the couch all day reading and not working at all, but I've got a mortgage to pay and kids to put through school and all sorts of lots and lots of bills to pay, so I actually have to write to live, because I love to read. I absolutely love reading. Lately, I have been reading outside my usual genres. In fact, I've got the books nearby. I've read these 2, which are paranormal fantasy books. This I saw people raving about on TikTok, so I bought it, and it's so different to anything I've read in a long time, but I was totally hooked on it. It was really great. This one is a historical mystery with some Greek mythology wound through it. And once once again, it is not something I would normally buy or read, but I was actually doing a book signing at a bookstore, and I just asked, one of the staff if you could recommend something to me, sort of out of my usual genre, and he handed me that. And it was really good. So, yes, I do read outside my genre, but not often. Wendy's asked, do you get a say in titles and cover graphics? Yes and no. It actually really depends. Normally the title gets changed, but it's more because the marketing and sales departments at the publisher, like sort of have an idea of what will actually probably sell the best. With the cover, normally I'm shown it, and asked if I like it. Is there sort of like sort of things I change? Um, but even that, once again, it comes back to how well the marketing department thinks a book will fly off actual shelves. So yes, I do have a certain amount of say, but it ultimately comes down to that team. Helen said, my sister finished My Sister's Husband late last night and wanted me to tell you that she loved it, actually gasping out loud at the end. Thank you so much. That's just so lovely to hear. That's probably my favourite psychological thriller I've written out of the 5 that I've had published over the last 3 years. So it is really nice to hear that. Thank you so much. Melissa's asked, how many years have I been writing books for? I actually, uh, I actually started writing probably in 2001. And it's the only story I didn't ever complete. Um, all my other books I've written have sold. But with that story, because at the time I just was working full time in a health centre, I thought I'm going to write a story about a doctor and a physiotherapist. And I'm thinking, I think I was nearly halfway through, or perhaps maybe 8 or 10 chapters into the book. And I thought, this is boring. I work in a health centre. I'm a physio. Why on earth I'd want to read this? So I quit that book, and it's the only one that I've never, ever finished. So I really dived into writing probably 2002, and I sold and signed my first contract in 2003. Um, so yeah, it's actually weird now to think that I've been writing, or I've been an author longer than I was a physiotherapist. So yeah, it's fun. Any other questions? Because we're sort of heading towards the end of our time together. So please, if you'd like to ask me anything else, now's your chance. Like I said earlier, this book has a wide cast of characters. It has 2 plots in one book, and it was fun to write. You can buy it right now in paperback, ebook, audiobook. Oh, Bev's asked, what are you writing now? I would love to actually say I'm writing a lot, but I'm actually writing, well, I'm not writing nothing, because I do have a book I'm probably about halfway through. It's something a bit outside my normal genres, not because I haven't written enough genres already. It's a suspense novel with Gothic undertones, and it's also a book that I'm not sure where it's going to head. I'm not sure if it's going to be more suspense or if the actual gothic part of it's going to take over. So I actually am working on that, but for the last few weeks, I haven't had writing time because if a book launches, it's normally really, really hectic. And I've been out and about, sort of doing book signings at stores and interviews and that type of thing. So I actually haven't actually sat down and written for maybe probably a month. And it feels weird because I like to write sort of every single day if I can. Um, so it's rather odd, and I actually feel a bit naughty that I haven't been writing. So I'm hoping in the next few weeks to actually get back to that. But then I've got this book launching in another 2 weeks, so then I'm going to be very busy doing activities online for this. And I've got people asking for book 2 in this already. And I have a vague plot in my head, so I guess I need to start writing that too. So it's going to be a fun time when I actually get back to writing, because that's what I actually like to do. If I'm not reading or being a very busy mum, I'm writing. So is there anything else? This is the last chance because we're about to wind up. So please feel free to ask your last questions now. Thank you, Wendy. It's been really, really good to be here, and lots of interesting questions, which is nice. Whilst I'm just rambled on about writing and books and genres as well, and things I'm reading. Helene's asked, "Does your family read your books?" No, my hubby has only read one book in his life, and that was my first book. He's not a reader at all, but it was actually like interesting because he picked up that first book of mine back in 2004, and he sat in the chair and he didn't move. He actually read the whole thing and said he liked it. So that was high praise indeed from a non-reader. My kids, my eldest boy read my first young adult novel when he was 12, and I was nervous. I was really, really nervous when I watched him read it because I thought, I mean, like he used to read lots of books. I thought, "Geez, I hope he likes it and doesn't think it's crappy," but he did like it. So I think it's time they actually do read more of my books. So thank you, everybody, for coming here and having a chat with me. It's been lovely talking to you all, and I'm sure I'll see you all online.